At my own son's wedding, the bride sat me in the kitchen while the music and laughter carried on without me. I kept my back straight, my smile calm, even as the sting of years of sacrifice pressed heavy in my chest. Quietly, I placed the receipts and documents I'd saved for decades into my red folder, ready to show the truth no one expected. That moment was only the beginning of a storm they couldn't control. The sky over Charleston held that thick, golden haze you only see in late afternoons when the magnolias lean heavy with bloom. I stepped out of the car with careful dignity, smoothing down the navy dress I had chosen days before. The fabric wasn't new, but it was pressed sharp. With a strand of pearls clasped around my throat, I wanted to look like I belonged, like any mother of the groom would at her son's wedding. For a moment, standing under the broad arches of the plantation-style hall, I believed I might feel some pride for Tavares. Pride for the family I had poured so much of my life into. But as I walked up the steps, I noticed how conversations faltered. Folks who had known me for years glanced my way and then let their eyes slide past, as if they hadn't seen me at all. I greeted two cousins. One nodded faintly. The other pretended to check her phone. A chill slipped under my skin, sharper than the humidity. Still, I lifted my chin, telling myself, "Smile, Eudora, it's your son's day." Pride carried me across the threshold, but unease tugged at every step. Inside, the ballroom glowed with chandeliers and polished floors. Waitstaff in pressed uniforms moved quickly, setting crystal glasses and linen napkins. I slowed, waiting for someone to direct me to my seat. A young coordinator, barely out of college, approached, glanced at her clipboard, then gave me a polite but detached smile. "Mrs. Fenwick, right this way." She led me past tables draped in white, each with floral arrangements that looked like they belonged in a magazine spread. Guests were already settling, chatting, sipping champagne. I expected her to stop near the front, near Tavares and Callista, but she kept walking through the main hall, past the polished crowd, straight toward a side corridor. I followed in silence, the sound of laughter fading behind me. She stopped at a small round table pressed against the swinging kitchen door. The smell of dish soap and reheated bread drifted through the gap every time the door slapped open. A single chair sat there, half-shadowed, far from the music and chatter. "This will be yours," she said simply, placing the program on the table. Before I could respond, the door swung again, a server balancing trays brushing past my shoulder. For a heartbeat, I stood frozen, my son's mother, seated in the kitchen corner. My pulse thudded, but I forced myself to breathe evenly. I lowered myself into the chair, arranging my skirt so it wouldn't brush the scuffed legs. A waiter rushed by, muttering, "Excuse me, ma'am," like I was in the way. Another server leaned to a colleague, whispering, "That's the mother." "Why back here?" Their voices weren't cruel, just curious, but each word pressed salt into the cut. I felt my cheeks heat. My hands wanted to grip the table, to slam my palms flat. Instead, I folded them neatly in my lap. They want me small, invisible. Let them think I'll play that part, outwardly. I smiled faintly as though nothing was wrong. Inside, anger coiled tight. Then I noticed the chair itself. The cushion bore a dark stain, the fabric frayed. One leg wobbled if I shifted my weight. It wasn't an accident, not at a place this pristine. I glanced up just in time to see Callista, the bride, casting a sly look from across the room. Her lips curved not a bride's blissful smile, but something sharper, smug. She turned back to her bridesmaid, Miley's, whispering. Their shoulders shook with quiet laughter. I swallowed hard. I could feel eyes flicking toward me, then away quickly, as though everyone understood what had been done but no one intended to intervene. Their silence pressed heavier than the chair itself. I straightened, adjusted the pearls around my neck, and settled firmly despite the wobble. My heart hammered, but my face stayed smooth. You don't win by storming out, I told myself. You win by outlasting. The kitchen door slammed open again, gusting warm air and clattering trays. Each slam marked me like a drumbeat unwanted, sidelined, forgotten. I stared at the program in front of me, reading my name buried in tiny print, no mention of mother of the groom at the front, no honor, no speech. My son Tavares walked past without pausing, his gaze sliding like I was any other guest. That cut deeper than all the rest. Miley's drifted by my table at one point, her voice dipped just enough for me to hear. "Comfortable back here, hope the draft isn't too much." She didn't wait for an answer, just smirked and rejoined Callista. I lifted my water glass and sipped slowly, hiding the burn in my chest. My mind whispered the truth. They've decided I don't belong in the picture. They want me erased, but I've lived too long, carried too much, to let a dirty chair be the final word. I let the corners of my mouth lift in a calm, unreadable smile, outward grace that was the mask. Inside, I kept my fury banked, waiting, plotting. A seat says more than a speech, I thought. And the seat they gave me told the whole room exactly what they thought of me. Still, they mistook silence for surrender. I let them believe it for now. Because I knew in my bones, this was only the first insult. They had planned more, and I would be ready. The hum of voices rose as the reception began to take shape. From my seat by the service door, I watched ushers pass out glossy cream programs embossed in gold, the kind of stationery people frame afterward as keepsakes. One of them, a young man in a pressed suit, approached me with the same routine smile he gave everyone else. "Ma'am, enjoy the evening," he said, setting a folded program in my hand before moving along. I traced the edges, steadying my fingers out of habit. Years in hospitals taught me how to handle paper like it carried the weight of news, good or bad. The faint scent of toner clung to the cardstock, mixing with the sweetness of gardenias drifting from the arrangements. A clatter from the kitchen door brought in a whiff of frying oil, reminding me exactly where I sat wedged between perfume and grease. I opened the program, bracing myself though I didn't know why. My eyes fell to the heading Parents of the Groom. The line beneath was blank, just a hollow space where my name should have lived. Instead, beneath it, a memorial note to some distant relative I barely knew, written in italics as though that carried more meaning than the woman who birthed the man of the hour. I read the list twice, certain I must have missed something. The bride's family had paragraphs. Callista herself had an entire note praising her spirit. Even Milas was credited with a blessing at the close. My name never appeared. I closed my eyes for a second, listening to the sound of glasses clinking, laughter filling the room. An usher circled back. I held the program toward him. "There seems to be a printing error." He gave a thin chuckle, eyes shifting. "Programs came straight from the bride's family, ma'am." "So mistakes are final tonight?" I asked, my tone flat. He looked down at his clipboard, voice dropping. "They said it was the final proof, and just like that." He walked off, eager to escape the discomfort. I overheard a couple behind me glance at my program. The woman whispered, "Maybe her name is on the slideshow." It was meant to soothe, but it landed like a pat on the head, dismissive and hollow. I scanned further. Toasts, dances, acknowledgments, all carefully curated. Vendors, charities, even college friends were thanked. Everyone but me. That wasn't an accident. Erasure rarely came with a shout. It arrived neatly formatted, printed, handed out with champagne. I folded the program once, then again. Sliding it into my purse, I breathed slow inhale. Exhale like I had during long midnight shifts when falling apart wasn't an option. I reminded myself control first, reaction later. The servers floated by carrying flutes of Prosecco. Twice a tray stopped short, then veered toward clusters of bridesmaids. Skipping right past me, a woman I didn't know leaned in politely. "You must be from the groom's side? They kept it small." Her smile was thin, her tone one of dismissal. I nodded, saying nothing. Across the hall, Callista caught my eye and let a tiny smile curl her lips. Milas brushed her arm, like two teammates celebrating a small but meaningful score. My son moved behind the head table, his shoulders bright with pride, eyes fixed on everything but me. I touched the folded program in my purse again. Paper doesn't lie, I thought. When families decide who counts, it shows up in ink. Just then, a young server placed a plate in front of me. Chicken breast, pale and slick with congealed butter, asparagus wilted, rolls already hard at the edges. I looked up. Was this plated with the others? My tone was kind, though steady. Her cheeks flushed. She glanced toward the kitchen before whispering, "They told me to bring this one out now." She hurried off. Moments later, another server carried trays of steaming entrees to the main tables. The difference staged like a spotlight. Callista raised her glass, turning deliberately away, her gaze sliding past me as though I were part of the wallpaper. I cut one bite, not to eat, but to test. The chill of it confirmed what I already knew it had been waiting. Set aside, meant for me, timing tells its own story. They wanted me cold, secondhand. I adjusted the napkin carefully, covering nothing, but crowning the plate as though I owned the moment. My phone buzzed in my purse. I tapped a quick message to Odessa. Program left me off. I'm fine. Watching. Evidence stored. Witness alerted. I slid the fork beneath the rim, eyes lifted as the MC tapped the microphone. The crowd hushed. I steadied my shoulders, silent but unbowed. Then Tavares rose, glass in hand, his voice carrying over the room. Everyone leaned in, waiting. He began to thank the family who had made this day possible. My breath stilled, listening. My heart braced for the blow. The MC tapped the microphone, and the room hushed like velvet falling across a stage. I straightened the napkin at my little table by the swinging door, feeling the heat from the kitchen brush against my back, from where I sat. The head table glowed under the string lights, Callista beaming at the center, my son Tavares at her right, and Milas close, hand wrapped around her champagne stem like it was an ornament. Servers froze in place, trays lifted, eyes all forward. Everyone faced the glow, and I sat at a diagonal as if peering through a keyhole. I glanced once at the cream program tucked safely in my purse. Proof mattered. My hands stayed folded on the linen, my face still. To family, the MC said, raising his glass. A soft murmur followed, warm and easy, as if family meant the same thing to everyone in the room. I drew a long, even breath, the kind I had trained myself to take during long hospital nights. The hush pressed over the crowd, and my body read it like a weather shift. I knew a storm was rolling in, so I chose stillness. Tavares rose, adjusting his jacket, his voice carried, smooth, polished, rehearsed. I want to thank everyone who made this day possible. His eyes turned to Callista. You showed me what home feels like. The room swelled with approval. Then he looked toward Milas. You've treated me like a son from the very beginning. Guests hummed in agreement. Someone near me whispered, so lucky to marry into such grace. Another murmured, he's set for life. I waited, listening the way a mother waits for a heartbeat on a monitor, counting the silence between phrases. Nothing. He moved on. Your family opened every door, lifted every burden, he continued. His glass tipped toward the head table. He thanked vendors, college buddies, even the woman who designed the calligraphy on the invitations. He said my parents once, gesturing to where Callista's folks sat, glowing like crowned royalty. My lips parted, not to speak, but to steady my breathing. I caught his gaze for a second. No. Not even. He scanned past me as though the swinging door was nothing but a wall. My jaw softened. I refused to give the room the spectacle of a clenched face. Applause rose like a wave. Callista dabbed her cheek with a tissue she'd kept ready. Milas nodded, approving like a priest. I kept my hands open on the linen. Open palms tell a story, not begging, not fighting, just existing. I reminded myself. Erasure isn't silence. It's a curated speech. It's the part they choose to print. The words they practice until they forget who else was in the story. And I thought of Maya Angelou's line, one I had lived by more than once. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Memories flickered. Brown paper lunch bags packed before dawn, braces paid off with double shifts, a rainy night steering one-handed so he could make his chess match. I remembered the way his shoulders eased when he won, not gratitude but relief. I had promised myself back then my power was consistency. That same power kept me calm tonight. I glanced at my phone, just low enough not to draw eyes. I recorded the time. Humiliation leaves a trail, and trails matter when truth is questioned later. Pain pressed, but I let it settle. Pain is no driver, purpose is. The band eased into a soft standard. Glasses clinked again. Guests crowded around Callista, their compliments rolling like polished marbles. I saw who leaned in first, those who wanted their names remembered tomorrow. Servers passed trays, skipping me as though it was written into the choreography. Tavares sat again, laughing with Isidore Kellington, pulled into a new orbit that no longer revolved around me. Two guests glanced toward my corner, then looked away, embarrassed by their own awareness. They didn't want to be caught noticing me. I rolled my shoulders once, letting the tension slide off like water. Composure is not a personality trait, it's a discipline. Then Miley's drifted near, her smile smooth as polished glass, holding a crystal flute. "You like quiet, right?" she asked sweetly. "We thought this spot might be comfortable for you." I met her eyes. Comfortable is a word you should check twice before offering. Her head tilted. "You know how these events are so many moving parts. Don't take it personally. I rarely do," I said evenly. "I take it factually." Her manicured hand tapped the back of my chair. "Good. We want you to feel included. In your way?" She lifted her glass toward the glowing hall. A server swept in with steaming plates for the others. My cold entree stayed where it was. I didn't rise, didn't shift my chair. I let her walk off believing she had finished her scene. She hadn't. I had just started my record. I texted Odessa a short line. "He thanked," she replied with a single dot. We understood the code. I set my phone face down. I aligned my fork and knife, neat as coordinates. I rehearsed a sentence only for myself. I am not begging a seat. I am reclaiming the bill. The MC called for a special acknowledgement from the bride's family. Laughter bubbled, chairs scraped, all eyes tilted forward. I steadied my shoulders, centering breath through my palms. And then Callista turned. Her eyes found mine across the glow. Her smile sharpened, and it landed like a signature. She believed she owned the map of my life. The chandeliers shimmered overhead, their glow catching every polished glass and magnolia centerpiece. The air carried a sweet heaviness, gardenias mixing with the faint oil slipping out of the kitchen door. I sat in my small corner, linen beneath my palms, the hum of voices folding into the music. Then Callista shifted in her chair at the head table, tall and deliberate. Her eyes met mine. Her smile wasn't joy, it was possession. The kind of smile a woman wears when she believes she's claimed a territory. She didn't need to speak. That expression mapped me into a box, right by the swinging door, as if she'd drawn a line and written, "This is all you deserve." I didn't flinch. One hand rested flat on the linen, the other brushed the cream program tucked in my purse. Paper evidence wears daylight clothing, it doesn't shout. It waits, behind me. The door thudded against my shoulder as another tray of entrees slid past. Across the room, Tavares laughed with Isidore, orbiting his new family like a satellite catching a stronger pull. I let the scene etch itself in memory. A smile can be a map. Hers showed me the borders she believed I could not cross. The look lingered. She tilted her head, as though appraising furniture, deciding what belonged near the window and what stayed near the hallway. Milas brushed her shoulder, whispering stage notes only Callista needed to hear. Two bridesmaids cast a glance toward me, then pulled their eyes away quickly, rehearsing the choreography of polite exclusion. A passing server paused. "Everything all right here?" "Ma'am, just fine," I said, steady. Then I added, "Please keep the corridor clear." My tone wasn't sharp, but the subtext was clear. I would not beg for comfort. I straightened in my seat, not to be noticed, but to notice. Power isn't always loud. It lives in the records we keep and the timing we choose. The band tuned a chord, chandeliers winking in response. I kept my gaze forward, eyes sharpened, watching. Then came the sting. A man, middle-aged, face unfamiliar, broke from a group and wandered toward the service hall. His step faltered as he saw me, angled at my little table beside the swinging door, my cold plate still untouched. He stopped, his brow pinching slightly. "Excuse me, are you with the staff?" The words cut cleaner than any toast. I kept my tone even. "No, I'm family." His eyebrows jumped, just a fraction, the kind of startle that hides apology in silence. He fumbled for a turn. "Oh, well, the servers have been great tonight." His voice rushed, eager to cover his mistake. I tilted my head slightly, gifting him a way out. The bar's on the far side. Grateful. He nodded quickly and slipped back toward the crowd. Inside, I held the line, "When a room is built to mislabel you, strangers will do the labeling for free." This was not just rudeness, it was design. I pulled out my phone under the table and tapped a message to Odessa. "Stranger, asked if I work here." Her reply came swift. "Stand tall. I'm your echo." 2 lines, a pact. I slid my chair a deliberate 2 inches away from the swing of the door. Small control, but mine, a young server, cheeks flushed pink, came by and leaned down. "I'm sorry about your seat." "You didn't assign it," I told her softly. Relief spilled across her face. Even kindness needs a safe place to sit. Out in the hall. Callista clinked her flute. Miley's laughed a beat too brightly. The band slid into a standard, smooth and predictable, like their staged choreography of family. I lifted my water glass, not to toast but to grip. My fingers remembered the weight of trays, nights when palms steadied more than arms could carry. I thought, you don't have to raise your voice to raise a line in the sand? I realigned my fork and knife, letting the cold gloss of the chicken catch the light. Evidence. Sitting plain as day, Tavares crossed my line of sight. For one beat, he slowed, eyes hovering near me, then veered left, away. Love, I reminded myself, does not erase the ledger. A bridesmaid pointed at the head table cards, smiling, perfect. She said, perfection is cheaper when someone else pays the price. The prickle of anger threatened to rise. But I breathed it down. I am not the storm. I am the pressure system that ends it. I drew in the magnolia-scented air, counted to 5, and made my decision. The next humiliation would not pass unpriced. They thought the smile and the question would hold me in place. They forgot who holds the bill. I angled my chair just far enough that the kitchen door no longer clipped my shoulder, then slid my phone from my purse. Around me, the hall buzzed, laughter bouncing under chandeliers, forks clinking as if the sound itself was currency. I opened a folder I'd created weeks ago labeled simply vendors. Line after line scrolled before me: venue deposit, catering installments, florist balances, bar extensions, band retainer. Each entry stamped with the same phrase: paid in full by Eudora Fenwick. My finger traced the screen the way it once traced hospital charts. If it's not written down, it didn't happen. And tonight, I had written proof of everything. Every detail they called exquisite was carved out of my checking account. Pretty is a bill, I thought. Perfection is a bill with interest. One email caught my attention: Sunday brunch arrangements, balance pending. A note beneath: cancellation permitted until midnight. I underlined it with my mind's pen, spine straightening. Nobody spends my name and buries my seat. Weeks of upgrades replayed in my head, each one introduced with sugar on the tongue. Oh, it will elevate the look, Callista had purred, eyes shining like she was presenting a crown jewel. Miley's would add her blessing. It's just a small add-on. You're such a blessing to this family. And me always measured. Send me the contract. The extras piled high: antique gold chargers, calligraphed menus, a custom cocktail, longer bar hours. Tonight, guests called it breathtaking. Not one of them knew that every gilded detail had passed through my signature. My name absent from the program, but present on every invoice. I scrolled to the catering contract. There it was in black letters: final balance authorization, Eudora only. A small note, easily missed by most, but mine to wield. If they wouldn't say my name, they would at least honor my signature. A junior coordinator in black heels walked past, tablet in hand. I leaned slightly toward her. Who is listed as the paying party for incidentals tonight? Her eyes flicked to the screen. Eudora Fenwick. Good, I said calmly. If any last-minute add-ons are requested, you call that name before you move a single chair. Relief softened her shoulders. Yes, ma'am, I'll let the desk know. I nodded, sliding my phone shut. That wasn't a threat, that was clarity. Adults know the difference. I texted Odessa, all bills in my name. Logged. Her reply came back quick. Copy. 2 women holding the same record, one inside the hall, one outside it. The MC tapped the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, let's honor our families. Please welcome the groom's mother, Mrs. Fenley. The wrong name landed heavy and smooth, practiced enough to sound intentional. A ripple of polite cheers rolled through the hall. A few heads turned toward the head table. Clapping for someone who wasn't me, I didn't rise. I lifted one hand to chest height, steady, undeniable. To the nearest staffer, I said clearly, "It's Fenwick." The MC stuttered, corrected. "Of course, Mrs. Wick," then barreled on. Redirecting praise toward Callista's family, erasure with a stammer? Miley smirked like she'd planned the slip. Callista sipped her champagne with that same small smile, judgment sealed in the curve of her lips. My son stared at his napkin, neutral as stone. I aligned my fork and knife parallel, a ritual that steadied me. They could misname me in public, but I would not misplace myself. I opened the vendor folder again, highlighting the florist's brunch order, balance due tomorrow morning, cancellation free if done before midnight. I drafted one line in my notes app, unsent but ready, cancel Sunday brunch arrangements. Fenwick authorization, timing is leverage, and leverage works best when the other side thinks the day is already won. I lifted my water glass, catching the magnolia scent drifting from the centerpieces. If respect could not be found in the program, it would be found in the payment terms. The next voice they put on the microphone might not be mine, but my signature, my choices would still be the loudest sound in that room. From my corner table, I noticed the light before I heard the laughter. A cluster of bridesmaids stood near the bar, their faces glowing blue from a phone screen. One leaned into the others, showing something, and the giggles spread like wildfire. I caught snippets floating across the hum of glasses clinking. She covered everything, legend, go big tonight. Their words were dipped in sarcasm, gratitude worn like cheap costume jewelry. I stayed put. I've lived long enough to know sound carries in rooms built for speeches. Their laughter bounced over the polished floor straight to my ears. A young groomsman stumbled past me, catching the same joke. His lips curling into a grin, he mouthed, paid in full, and winked toward the head table. I didn't need to move. I simply angled my head and let the scene wash over me. Inside, I whispered to myself, when people brag about a favor you never offered, that's not a compliment. That's a rumor trying to find roots. I slid my phone into my lap, not to scroll, but to be ready to timestamp the moment proof appeared. The sting came sharper when one bridesmaid read it aloud. His mom is covering everything, go big, she sang, and the others roared. Emojis scattered across their screen like ice clattering in a glass. I turned slightly toward the mirror behind the bar. In its reflection, I caught the handle at Callista Haverford, stamped across a recent payment to one of the girls. I beckoned a junior coordinator walking by, her tablet clutched to her chest. Tell me whose name is on incidentals tonight. She scrolled quick, her brows knitting. Eudora Fenwick. Good, I said calmly. If anyone requests extras, you call me before approving. Every time. Yes, ma'am, she whispered. Relieved to have rules, I opened the Notes app, tapping time 8:42 p.m. Location by bar. Venmo caption heard verbatim. Witnesses 3 bridesmaids, 1 groomsman. I closed it, hands steady, a server brushed by, cheeks red, whispering, that wasn't kind, I looked her in the eye. Kindness leaves a paper trail, too. Then I texted Odessa Venmo caption logged. They're bragging. Her reply landed fast, keep receipts, keep calm. I drew in a long breath. 5 counts in, 5 counts out, evidence first, reaction later. That's the adult math for dignity. I reopened my vendor folder, scrolling to the clause on bar extension's final authorization required by paying party. I motioned to the coordinator again. No overtime, no special pours, unless I approve them. Understood, understood, she said. Relief flooding her tone. Have your captain initial every new order slip. That's the watermark I'll need tomorrow. She nodded, tapping notes. I thought to myself, if they want to turn my wallet into a chandelier, I'll be the one to flip the switch. The band shifted into another tune when the MC raised his microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, a special heirloom gift has been presented to celebrate this union. A velvet box appeared at the head table, cradled like treasure. I knew that box before I saw it. My vintage ring set appraised, insured, and registered under my name gleamed in Callista's hands. Miley's rose, voice smooth as silk. From our family to yours, she declared, the words rolling like honey across the hall. Callista held up the box, her smile bright as a trophy winner. The room erupted, guests whispered, old money always brings the finest, and taste runs in the Drayton line. I sat still, spine straight, not an error, an assignment. I pulled up my draft email. Subject line already prepared, provenance confirmation ring set hash RW118 attached. The appraisal PDF sat ready. I didn't send it, not yet. Timing matters. I thought of the inscription inside one of the bands, 2 tiny initials tucked where no one ever looked. Proof lives in the inch nobody proofreads. A guest leaned over to another, murmuring, exquisite. Must be generations deep. I tightened my grip on my glass, then loosened it. If they steal credit, don't steal focus. Keep the proof. Wait for the moment the music's too loud to hear an apology. I motioned for the coordinator once more. Note this, I said, any public reference to that ring set as Drayton property is inaccurate. It is on loan from me to the couple. Log it time. Speaker, wording. She hesitated. Do you want me to correct the MC? Not tonight, I said softly. Record it. Tomorrow, the log will speak. I snapped a picture of my phone screen. My email draft open, appraisal visible, timestamp glowing. The photograph was cleaner than memory. Then I slid my phone back into my purse, my hands folding once more on the linen. A boundary doesn't need applause to be real. They thought the joke in the heirloom would pin me in silence. What they forgot is this records don't sit, they stand. The lights dimmed, and a hush rippled across the hall. A coordinator raised 2 fingers toward the AV booth, and the piano eased into a slow loop. The big screen bloomed with Tavares's childhood bandaged knees, birthday candles, graduation cap tilting on his head. Every image pulled from years I had underwritten with night shifts and whispered prayers. I sat straighter, though still. If I existed anywhere tonight, it should have been here. Motherhood doesn't leave receipts, but it leaves fingerprints on every timeline. My palms pressed flat against the linen, anchoring myself. Hope is a muscle I keep toned, but never let run the room. The silverware clinks faded, and the crowd leaned forward toward the glow. I slid the printed program deeper into my purse. Proof could rest. Evidence would wake when it was needed. The montage spun on, deliberate as a polished reel. But the sting came sharp whenever a frame should have held me. It skipped, cropped, or shifted. At the science fair, where my hand steadied Tavares's project, the image had been cut just enough so my fingers disappeared. At prom, the corsage I tied was cropped out. Every edit clean, intentional, around me. Voices murmured admiration, so polished. They thought of everything. Perfect storytelling. Praise piled high for a narrative that erased me with surgical precision. I didn't cry. Tears are luxuries for women who haven't stood watch in hospital corridors with harsher lights and less kindness. My discipline held, I told myself. Erasure looks professional when it's exported in 4K. I didn't lift my phone toward the screen. Instead, I turned it discreetly toward the room, snapping one photo of the audience itself, their tearful faces, their awed gasps. None of them directed my way. Their expressions were the exhibit, not the slideshow. A young server froze mid-step, concern etched across her face. I gave her a small nod. No rescue needed. This wasn't a wound, it was a ledger being written. Then came the door. The kitchen traffic surged again, and the swinging panel slammed the edge of my table. Thud. A punctuation mark on the edited reel. The busser, apologetic, whispered, "Sorry, ma'am," on his 5th pass. I shifted my chair 2 inches. Still, the door grazed my elbow. Not accident, design. The hall burst into laughter at a clip of Callista in college. Thud. The door smacked again, timed like choreography. I leaned toward a floor captain, voice low but precise. "Please redirect traffic. This is a guest seat." She nodded quickly, but Melis raised a hand from across the room, summoning her back like a general calling a soldier. I whispered inward. When a room chooses aesthetics over people, a door becomes policy. I moved my water glass a few inches off center. When the door swung again, it caught the glass, slowed, and eased back. Microengineering dignity with one small wedge. Applause swelled as the final montage frame showed Callista under sparklers. Credits rolled special thanks, my name nowhere in sight. The clapping lasted full seconds. I counted them, noted the exact time on my phone. Timestamps weave into fabric tougher than applause. 2 guests nearby dabbed tears, murmuring, "What a mother she has in Melis." Fresh wallpaper slapped over the bare wall of truth. I texted Odessa, video erased me. "Door keeps hitting. Logged." Her reply. "Witness on standby." I slipped the phone back, feeling not rage but tempered iron. Anger is loud, leverage is quiet. I scanned the room, the AV booth, the bar, the service lane, mapped them like a nurse triaging a Friday night rush. Pressure points, exits, weak seams. When the crowd turned toward the first dance, I stepped toward the floor captain once more, catching her in a lull. My voice stayed soft for courtesy and safety. Hold that door 5 minutes at a time during program moments. She glanced at Miley's, then nodded, hesitant. Thank you, I said, and returned to my seat. I lifted my phone again, photographing the scuff marks the door had left on the chair leg. Proof doesn't bruise, but space does. If they won't see you, make them see the mark they leave. The piano swelled, couples turned to the floor. I remained steady, counting not their steps, but my own. A junior coordinator hustled past, muttering into her headset. Bride's mom wants slides changed for the toasts, more edits, still. Truth was fluid here unless someone froze it. I froze it, notes saved, time stamped, faces logged. The ledger thickened in silence. They thought trimming the past would leave me invisible. They forgot the present was taking notes. The music softened into background chatter as I stepped away from the crowded hall. My excuse was air, though the truth was quieter than that. The corridor light flickered, buzzing just enough to blur voices leaking from a half-closed office door. Through the narrow glass, I caught Reflections Callista's sharp profile, Miley's steady nod, Isidore Kellington hunched over a tablet like a banker balancing accounts. I muted my phone, thumb hovering over notes. Old habits from hospital nights returned to listen first, write second. I stood angled so no one could accuse me of snooping. No recording, just my ears and the timestamp. The smell of floral foam and stale coffee lingered from earlier tastings. Out here, the band's rhythm faded, leaving only the language of power money and etiquette. I steadied my breath. People think the stage owns the night, but it's in the wings where truth slips its mask. Keep her off camera, Callista said flat, as if assigning furniture. Milas added, head table stays pure. Isidore tapped the tablet, budget's fine, his mother's underwriting. The words landed hard. I typed quick. Quotes with names beside them. Evidence survives better than outrage. Edits are locked. Callista continued, if she asks, call it a print issue. Seat her near service, Malis added, so she's taken care of. I swallowed, cool and measured, typing every phrase. Taken care of like a patient too sick for her own chart. Vendors confirmed, Isidore said, all balances authorized by her. The word authorized stuck, not flattery, a hinge, swinging both ways. Miley's voice dropped lower. He owes us a flawless night. Don't let her feelings make it messy. Their last instructions sealed it. If there's noise, call me not her. I saved the note with the clock time. In some families, love is a script. Control is the director's cut. I stepped onto a side veranda, the night air heavy with magnolia. From my purse, I pulled a slim red folder sleeve, edges worn from years of keeping it close. Inside, a printout of Thaddeus Roebuck's letter, part memo, part benediction. My eyes skimmed the bullet points I already knew by heart, funds earmarked for Tavares's milestones, with me as sole signatory. No balance cleared without my written authorization. The ring set held in my care for transfer at my discretion. An addendum clause, no disbursement where the signer is excluded or misrepresented. The ink loops were steady, the notary's seal crisp. I had photographed each page last week. Tonight, I checked dates and signatures again, as if to remind myself I wasn't dreaming. You don't need to raise your voice when you can raise the paper. I whispered. Back inside, I drafted unsent emails to the venue manager authorization scope Fenwick, with memo photos attached, to the florist Sunday brunch delivery pending authorization, clause quoted, to the band second set contingent on Fenwick approval. Each one starred, ready but unsent. Timing is leverage. Leverage works best when they think the night is theirs. I texted Odessa, heard them sideline me. Thad's memo ready. Drafts armed. Her reply. Stand tall. Sign later. Power isn't loud. It's legible. Footsteps echoed. Tavares came down the corridor, shoulders stiff, eyes searching for quiet. I called his name once. Steady. He stopped. Did you know what they planned? I asked. He hesitated. Mom, tonight is complicated. Complication is not cruelty, I answered. He looked at the floor. Please don't start anything. I held his gaze long enough to sting. I won't start anything. I'll finish what I started raising you. And I'll finish these balances correctly. He exhaled, torn, then turned back toward the hall. I didn't chase him. Some truths sit like chairs no one offers you. If a man can't stand at his own wedding, I thought, he'll learn to stand in the bill. I checked my drafts again, photographing the screen with the time showing. I slipped the folder back into my purse. I wasn't a secret, I was the signer. The music swelled from the hall, applause breaking like waves. They thought the story was locked. I straightened my shoulders, walked toward the glow. The kitchen door no longer a throne, just wood on hinges. The next time they spent my name, they'd hear mine first. I rose slowly from my small service side table, smoothing the front of my dress like I'd done 1,000 Sundays before church. The band tuned for their second set, and the guests buzzed with sugar and champagne. I checked the time on my phone, inhaled once, and made a choice paper before volume. Action before explanation. My notes were already lined with quotes, names, times. Draft emails sat ready. Attachments proofed. Grown folks work in timing, not tantrums. Passing the kitchen. I nodded to the floor captain. My face stayed calm. No tremor. No hint that a lever was about to turn. People think power is a microphone, but more often, it's a contract you actually read. I stepped toward the admin desk tucked behind the reception hall, where a glowing tablet hummed like a register of dignity. I called the band manager from the corridor. My tone was low but firm. The event code in hand, per clause 7B, second set authorization is withheld. He tried a gentle push. We're queued and half set, I answered, even as a steady nurse checking vitals deposit stands. Balance is closed. While we spoke, I sent the same words in email, subject line stamped with the minute. Attachment included Thaddeus Roebuck's memo noting final approval signed by me. He sighed. Professional. Understood, Miss Fenwick. And just like that, the second set dissolved. No spotlight, no drumroll, simply gone. I logged the time. Silence isn't surrender. Sometimes it's a signed instruction. My fingers moved quick to the florist. Email sent confirming cancellation of Sunday brunch installs. Clause states no remainder due if canceled before midnight. See attached. Within minutes. An auto reply. Then a note from a human voice received. Marking canceled. A petal fell. But the rose was my boundary. At the service desk, I asked for the bar lead. No extended pours. No second shift cocktails. Honor the base package only. He checked the tablet. Paying party is Eudora Fenwick. I gave him a look that needed no rehearsal. Correct. Log it. He wrote his initials JK 10:47 p.m. on the order sheet. I thanked him plainly. He nodded, almost relieved someone gave him rules. I texted Odessa band late set closed, florist brunch canceled, bar extensions locked. She answered quick. They wrote you out, you wrote the checks, balance restored, back on the floor. The MC's eyes darted for the band leader. The playlist slid into a canned track nice enough, but not what had been promised. Callista frowned. Miley's smile tightened. Isidore tapped his phone like he could command respect through a screen. A groomsman muttered, they cut the fancy hour. A bridesmaid shrugged. Budget. Maybe. That word landed right where I wanted. I sipped my water. Steady. Dignity doesn't need applause. It needs receipts. When you pull a lever, the machine makes a new sound. You listen for it. In the lobby, a gilded easel displayed tomorrow's brunch chart. Names curled in calligraphy. My son's name sat neatly between Miley's and Callista. Groom centered in their orbit. Where mother of the groom should have rested was a cousin from out of town. My name wasn't misprinted. It was absent, clean, polite erasure. A staffer smiled gently. Lovely script. Right, I replied. Very legible, and snapped a photo, the time glowing on my screen. I had promised myself no scenes. I kept it. Scenes burn fast. Records burn clean. Being left off a chart is a decision. Correcting it isn't begging. It's accounting. I sent Tavares the photo in 3 words. Is this right? Dots blinked, vanished, blinked again. His reply, it's just brunch. Mom, please don't make it bigger. I slipped my phone away. Standing in the lobby's cool light, love can be true and insufficient at the same time. A boundary isn't a slammed door. It's the quiet act of closing one yourself. Returning to the hall, I watched couples sway to the playlist. The flowers no longer scheduled to bloom tomorrow. The bar capped at its base. Nobody thirsty. Nobody deprived, just not on my account. I logged the last times, filed the photos. The night was closing and I wasn't small. I was exact. They wanted me invisible, but the bill had its own spotlight. The night leaned into its ending, the room tilting with fatigue, heels dangled from fingers, ties loosened into strings, and the playlist circled safer tracks because the band's second set had never come. Bartenders stacked glassware, the clink deliberate. My instructions keeping them to the base package only. I stood in the lobby's cooler air, my pulse steady, my purse snug against my arm. The room had no appetite left for spectacle, only cleanup. I scrolled through my notes times. Initials, quotes, screenshots. My list of switches was tidy. No smear, no wasted ink. That's what adulthood means, clean endings, not noisy ones. A bridesmaid stifled a yawn. Swiping her phone, a groomsman muttered near the gilded brunch chart. Budget must have shifted. The words spread in the air like perfume, subtle but undeniable. I smiled inwardly. When you move levers, physics does the talking. I stepped out onto the veranda for one bar of reception. Pulling up the photo of the cashiers checked my signature visible. The account number blurred, I drafted a caption simple as truth for tonight. Eudora. No hashtags, no blame, no loud punctuation, just daylight in paper form. I tapped post friends list only and slid the phone back into my hand. Replies came quick, nurses from my years on the floor, church sisters, neighbors from the block. We see you. Always stood tall. Their words didn't inflate me. They anchored me. Inside. A cousin gasped at her screen, showing another. Two bridesmaids bent together, whispering across the room. Callista's grin trimmed like a sail losing wind. I didn't refresh. Public proof doesn't need a speech. It needs witnesses. And tonight there were plenty. Back in the hall, the MC huddled with the coordinator, his eyes darting. The playlist looped clumsily, bumping into silence before restarting. Isidore scrolled his phone too fast. Miley smiled with her teeth, but not her eyes. Tavares's gaze brushed me, then dropped to the carpet. The bar lead caught my eye and nodded once. Respectful. One professional recognizing another. Guests murmured at programs and charts, the question forming out loud now. Why's her name missing? I sipped water, calm, the scuff mark still carved into my chair leg where the kitchen door had battered me earlier. I photographed it quietly. Marks tell stories people prefer erased. Then I made my next move. The ring set. I approached the venue manager. Voice soft but procedural correction needed in your event log. Liability favors accuracy. He blinked, summoned the junior coordinator and MC. In a small circle, I laid out the appraisal and Thaddeus's memo. My finger traced the hidden initials engraved inside the band. The evidence was plain. The manager's tone changed at once. Understood, Miss Fenwick. We'll note it and make a live correction. Minutes later, the MC's mic cut through the chatter. A quick acknowledgement, the heirloom ring set is entrusted to the couple by Eudora Fenwick. We thank her for that generosity. A stir moved across the floor. Some clapped politely. Some froze. Miley's lips twitched. Callista's hand stiffened around her flute. Tavares blinked like someone cracked a window in his sealed house. I didn't bow or wave. Truth doesn't need theater when it's notarized. Nearby, a woman whispered, "So that's whose it was." Another added, "Should have been clear from the start." The coordinator logged the correction. Time and initials entered. I took a discreet photo of the screen proof of proof. Isidore whispered fiercely at Callista. Miley's gaze searched the room for a lever still within reach. I shifted my chair away from the door swing. Just 2 inches. Tonight ended with accuracy and distance, not apologies. A boundary isn't revenge. It's the system that keeps future theft from rooting. I gathered my purse, folded my napkin. The chandelier glow skimmed the floor but had never touched my corner. I walked past the brunch chart without laying a hand on it. Tomorrow's flowers would not arrive under my name. That was the point. My phone buzzed with more messages, screenshots, affirmations, neighbors cheering quietly. I flipped it face down. Peace was mine to claim. At the lobby doors, I exhaled. I hadn't shouted. I'd signed. That was enough. When I stepped into the Charleston night, someone called my name. Not from the ballroom, from the curb, from the truth waiting outside. The night air met me like an old hymn, soft with salt and magnolia. Behind the glass doors, laughter thinned into a hum, but out here it was just me and the streetlight glow. Tavares stood under it, jacket off, bow tie sagging, a banker's box clutched against his chest. He looked less like a groom and more like a boy caught holding secrets too heavy. He said quietly, "You gave me this years ago, receipts, statements, notes. I didn't read them." His voice wasn't angry, just late. I kept my hands by my side. I wasn't about to rescue him from his own unease. A son can be a good man and a coward on the same evening. I nodded toward the box, set it down. Let's see it where the light can tell the truth. He lowered it to the curb. The cardboard flaps bent back, revealing edges of contracts, copies of Thaddeus Roebuck's memo, florist invoices, even the appraisal with my signature. Tavares spoke, voice raw. "I knew you helped. I didn't know you funded. All of it. You knew enough to stay comfortable." I answered, and comfort is never cheap. He hesitated. "Callista said we'd honor you privately." I shook my head. Erasure is not privacy. I tapped 3 pages with 2 fingers, the bar clause, the florist cancellation, the band's second set, then the memo line I'd memorized. No disbursement where the signer is excluded or misrepresented. He swallowed. A car rolled by, slow, headlights brushing our faces like witnesses. I told myself, "You don't teach grown children with speeches, you show them the line, and you don't move it." I looked him straight on. "You're married now. That's real. But my dignity is real too. I laid it out. Not as requests, but terms unauthorized charges are to be repaid within 30 days. Public acknowledgement accurate, not polished for every future family event. No booking vendors in my name without my written consent. And the ring entrusted, not transferred. You understand that difference?" His eyes dropped to the pavement. I let the silence hold the weight. Finally, I softened my tone. "Just a shade. I won't chase you into a family that doesn't have a seat for me. If you ever build one, you'll find me on my porch." I reached into my purse and pulled out the slim red envelope. Inside was a 1-page notice, drafted by my attorney, rooted in Thaddeus's memo. I read it aloud like a nurse reading discharge orders. "Funds gifted are moved into escrow under Eudora Fenwick. Disbursement resumes only when misattributions are corrected. Unauthorized charges repaid, and future spending either requires my signature or excludes my name entirely. The ring set is documented as entrusted property, no sale. No pawn, no resetting without my release." I placed the envelope in his hand. "This isn't punishment," I told him. "It's policy." His jaw tightened. "They'll say you're dramatic. They've said worse, just quieter." I replied, "Paper is my volume." He nodded once, not in agreement, but in surrender to fact. When you move love out of escrow, you make it cheaper. Mine stays valuable. He tried to reach. "Can you undo the florist? The brunch people flew in." "They flew in for you," I said evenly. "They can sit with that." He rubbed his temple. For a second, I saw the boy who once called me sick and scared from a college dorm, but I didn't soften the terms. "I won't speak ill of your wife," I added, "but I will speak accurately about myself." He hefted the box again. I didn't help. He had 2 good hands and a wedding band. Boundaries are kindest when they're clear the first time. We stood there under the light, a beat too long. Lobby laughter leaked through the glass, steam that could no longer warm us. He said, "I'll fix it." I answered, "Then fix it." No hug, no tears, just a door he'd need to knock on properly if he wanted back through. I turned toward the lot, breeze lifting the hem of my dress, magnolia leaves clapped overhead, polite witnesses to the close of a long night. I texted Odessa escrow notice delivered. She answered quick rest. At dawn, the brunch would look like a budget for the first time. It truly was. I woke before the sun, the kind of waking that feels like a choice more than an accident. The kettle hissed on my little stove, and I poured black coffee into my chipped blue mug. The steam rose soft and steady, not like smoke before battle, but more like a blessing before work. On the kitchen table sat my red folder, corners worn smooth from years of handling. Inside, I had every draft, every vendor reply, every timestamp, florist canceled, band second set closed, bar base package only. Each one was neat as stitches, no fray left hanging. My phone buzzed. A neighbor's message, "Proud of you. Miss Fenwick." Then Odessa managers on site. "If you want the event log, swing by the lobby." I slipped into flats and a cardigan. No theater, no need for Sunday best, just business. The folder tucked under my arm felt lighter than the burden it carried. Revenge is noisy, I thought. Accountability is legible. I didn't plan to sit at their brunch. I would walk through that lobby, collect what was mine in paper, and leave. By the time I reached the hotel, the air was still damp with dew. Easels displayed the brunch chart, my name still missing in calligraphy. The florist never came. Tables sat bare, their emptiness speaking more truth than blossoms ever could. Callista, Miley's, and Isidore crowded the junior coordinator at the host stand. Find the florist, extend the bar, fix the optics, they hissed. The venue manager appeared, steady as a courthouse clerk. I requested the event log. He printed it without fuss. Line by line it read, ring provenance corrected, bar extensions denied, Sunday floral install canceled per clause. Miley snapped. We were promised sparklers and stems. The manager turned the page toward her. Final authorizations Eudora Fenwick only. Isidore tried charm. Surely there's a family understanding. The manager cut him off clean. We follow documents, not dynamics. His hand flicked toward security, who stepped closer. Calm as oak trees. I stood 3 paces back, hands relaxed. I said one sentence, please ensure no charges post to my name. The manager nodded, confirmed. He printed a zeroed incident sheet for add-ons. I photographed it, time visible in the corner. Security dispersed the cluster like a breeze dispersing smoke. If the room won't seat you, let the ledger seat the truth. Servers carried plain white pitchers, a modest tray of pastries. Guests murmured about the missing blooms, about the playlist looping softer tracks instead of a live band. 2 cousins compared my posted check to the quiet scene around them. One whispered, it adds up. The other said, should have thanked her right. The manager emailed me the event log and correction note. I forwarded both to Odessa with one word filed. Isidore drifted my way, lowering his voice. We can resolve this offline. It already is. I said, not cold, just final. Maylisa's smile stayed, but her warmth had drained. Callista clutched her glass of seltzer, bubbles rising in a glass that promised nothing. Optics without leverage look like manners without meaning. You don't have to win the room when you've won the record. My phone buzzed again. Tavares, I read everything, I'm sorry. Then another, tell me what repair looks like. I typed back the same checklist as last night. Repay unauthorized charges, public acknowledgement at my choosing, no future spending in my name. Ring remains entrusted. Minutes later, he sent a photo of the brunch chart card, swapped out. It now read, Mother of the groom, Eudora Fenwick, entrusted ring. I didn't walk back inside. I asked the coordinator to log the update. Distance is a right once you've earned it. An apology is an invoice with a due date. Pay it, and the account reopens. That afternoon, I set my own table. Odessa came along with Mr. Henderson from next door, Ciro, a retired nurse from my ward, and 2 church ladies carrying casseroles. We spread a sunflower tablecloth I'd bought for myself, not anyone else. At the head sat one empty chair, then I took it. Odessa raised her glass of sweet tea. To Eudora, who taught us that a signature is a backbone, heads nodded, no spectacle, just respect. I texted Tavares a photo of that table. I wrote, this seat is earned. You know how. Family isn't who spends your money. It's who guards your name. Later, as the Charleston light softened, I slipped the ring's appraisal back into the folder. Entrusted remained entrusted. I poured coffee for myself first, as I always should have. I spoke to the silence, and maybe to the viewer too. Keep receipts, read clauses, never fund your own erasure. When you draw a line, draw it in ink. I didn't cancel love. I canceled access to my name until respect showed up with it. That isn't revenge. That's adulthood. Magnolia leaves tapped against the porch rail. The sound of polite witnesses. The story was finished. And if they ever wanted me in the picture again, they'd learn how to focus.